Kevin Keatts, NC State men's basketball coach, spoke to the media earlier today, had his off-season press conference, talked a lot about the transfer portal, talked about some of the new guys like MJ Rice coming in. He talked about how Rice just didn't really get an opportunity to play much at Kansas because of the roster that was there, and that's totally fine. But it seems like all indications that NC State is going to get every chance to play, especially with basically replacing their backcourt with Terquavion Smith and Jarkel Joyner both gone.
I think he said at one point, he's like, when you look at the shots that we have to replace,
yeah,
like Terquavion and Jarkel combined for like almost like 30 shots a game. So
it's
like
a lot.
For a guard, it's like, all right, come on down. Let's do this thing.
It's a chance to go out there and play right away if you're MJ Rice. Who was a 5-star recruit and, again, transferring in from Kansas. But one of the big things that Kevin Keatts talked about, this is something that we brought out a lot last week when the ACC and its athletic directors went down to Amelia Island in Florida a week ago, along with Commissioner Jim Phillips and other people from around the league. A big thing that was brought up was revenue distribution. But also part of that was the perception of the league, especially when it comes to basketball. ACC only had 5 teams make the NCAA tournament last year. Now, perception and numbers are two different things. But Kevin Keatts talked about how the ACC can boost its profile, but also analytically boost itself as well.
We've got to do a better job promoting our league. I think our network has to do a better job promoting our league. We, as a league, have performed very well in the tournament. But you can't tell me that in a 15-team league with really good programs that we should be getting just 5 teams in. And I think one of our jobs as coaches is we've got to do a better job of trying to win in November and December. Because the committee seems to me to be putting a lot of emphasis on your early wins opposed to what happens in your league. We have lived a little bit lately on the reputation of the league in basketball, and I think we need to get back to promoting it more than we do.
All right, Louis Fernandez, 3 things that popped out of my head in that 44 seconds of soundbite from Kevin Keatts.
Yes.
1, talking about the network needing to promote the league better. Can't ride the ACC name, just live simply off that, and then scheduling. The out-of-conference stuff, November, December. All right, so first, let's get into the network thing real fast. I think the ACC network as a whole, right now, and this can change, but the ACC network, again, which is operated by ESPN, needs to do a better job as a whole of basically having someone be the stand for the ACC, right?
Yeah.
So we look at college football. Anytime we talk college football, at least ESPN, what we see on there, who's the person that they bring on all the time?
Paul Feinbaum.
Who works for who?
The SEC network.
Exactly. So Clemson football has some struggles. Who do they go talk to? Paul Feinbaum, who's going to sit there and, you know what? Trash the ACC. You know why? Because it boosts the SEC.
It does.
If Vanderbilt gets a win in conference, that just goes to show you how tough the SEC is, blah, blah, blah. But Lord forbid Wake Forest wins games. Wake Forest is one of the top teams in the Atlantic. Therefore, the ACC stinks. It's like, that's not the case.
It's the national perception.
It's exactly. Perception.
If there's an SEC game where 2 SEC teams, the win, it's like, man, exactly, how hard is the ACC? But the ACC on ACC, a lot of times you boil down to like the ACC type stuff where you have like the Wake Forest Virginia Tech 0-0 tie going into overtime.
Yeah, with thing. Frank Beamer, 2 fists up in the air, all excited.
And some of that, there is some reality in that. Obviously, the SEC is the better football program or football conference, like 100%. Yes. But it is about how everything is perceived. Because, like, even in college basketball, right? So much of the past few years as we've made a transition to net, I feel like the ACC as a whole in the regular season has not been getting as much respect, and then they get to the postseason, they do a lot better. You still go back to 2005, and which conference has the most ACC men's basketball championships since 2005?
The ACC. You're talking about NCAA championships?
Yeah.
ACC.
Yeah, the ACC. Like, but it doesn't feel like that. And
yes,
there's a combination of things that goes into it, but it has to be improved.
Okay, so that ties into the second one of those things, scheduling. How the conference as a whole and each of these teams need to do more in November or December. So this gets into the net ranking. So this There's the perception side of things. There's also the analytics side, which sometimes they're parallel, but sometimes they go hand in hand. So a lot of people will look at the net rankings and the analytics and the KenPom numbers and all those kinds of things when looking at college basketball. And they'll say, well, look how great the Mountain West was. It's so much better than the ACC right now. That's just watch games. That's just not true. But the numbers, analytics, and how people can cook the books will tell you otherwise. For example, Nevada, one of the top teams in the Mountain West Conference, I think actually won their regular season, or are they finished in the top 2 or 3 other conference, played a non-conference road game at Kansas. Well, Kansas in the Big 12, all those non-conference games that the Big 12 won and how they scheduled the Big 12 boosted the Big 12 as a whole. Well, Kansas playing against them Nevada playing against Kansas at Kansas boosts Nevada's profile, even though they lost. They lost relatively close. I think it was like a 13-point game. Can't remember off the top of my head. But it was a respectable score. Well, it boosts the profile immensely of Nevada. So when the Mountain West schools play Nevada, especially when they go on the road there, well, what does that do? It boosts the profile of those schools as well. So that's, again, how you can manipulate the net to your favor. The ACC needs to go down to 18 regular season conference games because 20 hurts them, because that's just more quote-unquote losses in the conference, right? Because that's just how it works. But if you're able to schedule two more better non-conference games, whether it be a neutral site, you can boost your overall net rankings in November and December. So when conference play really hits in January, everyone's net rankings is kind of inflated to an extent. So when you're playing each other, you're playing against games with higher net, like more quad 1 and quad 2 games, as opposed to quad 3 and quad 4. Again, I know that's a convoluted way of explaining stuff probably,
No.
But that's what the ACC needs to do, and that's what Kevin Keatts is talking about.
You don't hate the player. Hate the game.
Yes.
If you want to, you have to have skin in the game if you want to win in the game.
You also got to know how to play the game.
Exactly. And the last thing that Kevin Keatts said there, I think it was just like, yes, exactly. The ACC is depending a little too much on its college basketball history.
Yeah.
We are in a what have you done for me lately type world right now. Mm-hmm. The ACC, I just mentioned how many great wins they've had in national championships in men's basketball over the past, 15, almost 20 years. The last one was in 2019. Virginia before COVID.
Yeah.
So, and that's not exactly one of those like championships that's going to make you, it's not going to sing the praises of the ACC because Virginia is such like an insular program in terms of what they do. It's not something that a bunch of teams are going to be able to copy essentially. It's to me, it is about understanding, being modernized in that situation and finding ways to, raise the water level of the entire ACC. It's you are an individual, but you're also your conference.
Yeah.
The SEC fans, the people who are SEC fans they love it when the SEC as a whole does great things. You need almost that kind of mentality with the ACC, which is different than I think we're used to in a lot of different ways, but it also leads to, because it feels a little bit like fanatic. You know what I mean? But it's what you need if you want to have success as a conference.
It crushed the ACC last year with Louisville and Florida State struggling in non-conference because that just completely dragged them down. So anytime a school played them, it dragged them down with it.
Yeah.
Even though you may have won, it's amazing how your net ranking was hurt by going on the road and beating a Florida State. Your net ranking dropped.
That was
like that. Those are kinds of things that need to change for the ACC. That's what Kevin Keatts is talking about.